All right, everybody. So I also wanted to draw out some nerves, the cranial nerves, because it's just helpful to me to draw out some stuff. So starting off, cranial nerve number 1, we know is our olfactory nerve. And we'll go ahead and talk about cranial nerve number 2 as well, our optic, because I kind of wanted to draw it in first. Sorry, I want a different color. So our optic nerve is going to be a special sense, and it's going to be sight. So that is going to come from around here, and it's going to intersect at the optic chiasm, as we know, optic chiasm, and it provides splits up to become our optic nerve, which goes directly to our eyes, as we know. And then above that, we would be able to see our olfactory nerve coming off kind of laterally and then running up this way. And we know that that would end up coming out of our cribriform plate and special sense of smell. So that's our olfactory nerve that would come up. Kind of zoomed in here. It would go further up. We know that we would have the tract and the nerve itself. And then we see our optic chiasm giving off our optic nerve, cranial nerve there. So moving on, cranial nerve number 3 is going to be our oculomotor nerve. So that nerve is going to be coming off just below the optic chiasm, kind of in the middle here. So we're going to see it be given off here. And we know that our cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor, supplies the muscles of the eye, except for the ones supplied by the trochlear and abducent nerves. Everything except for the lateral rectus and the superior oblique muscles are going to be supplied by that. Next, we are going to see cranial nerve number 4 coming off. So cranial nerve number 4 is going to be just coming off lateral to that one. So it's going to be here. Okay. So again, cranial nerve number 4 is going to be our trochlear nerve. Then we are going to see cranial nerve number 5. We'll label all these at the end. But again, we have olfactory, optic, oculomotor. Then we see trochlear. Now, we're going to have a big one come off on the side of the pons over here, and it is going to be our trigeminal. So again, it's coming off of the pons, and it's a big one. So we know that trigeminal is going to be important. It's going to be motor to the muscles of mastication, and it's going to be sensory to the face as well. So it's going to have those 3 big branches that we learned about in anatomy. So big guy. 3 branches coming off there. Okay. So then we're going to move down to cranial nerve number 6. Cranial nerve number 6 is going to be our abducens, and we know that I think I said that trochlear was lateral rectus. It is not, because remember our little acronym LR6, SO4, R3. So actually superior oblique would be supplied by the trochlear. So I am sorry about that. But cranial nerve 6 would supply our lateral rectus, and it is going to come off down here. So it's coming off right there. And that's, again, our abducens nerve. And we know that that is responsible for supplying lateral rectus nerve, or muscle. Next, we have the facial nerve. The facial nerve is going to be coming off at the junction of the pons and medulla, just like the abducens is. It's going to be a little more lateral. So it is going to be coming off over here. Again, that's facial nerve. So we know that facial is motor to the muscles of facial expression. It's also responsible for taste of the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. It's also supplying some submandibular, sublingual, lacrimal glands. So next is going to be our cranial nerve 8, or our vestibulocochlear nerve. So our vestibulocochlear nerve is going to be coming out below that. So let's get a different color. And again, this is going to be the junction of the pons and medulla. So this vestibulocochlear nerve. And we know that vestibulocochlear has 2 parts, going to be cochlear part and vestibular part. Vestibular part going to supply equilibrium, and then the cochlear part is going to be responsible for hearing. Cranial nerve number 9 is going to be our glossopharyngeal. It's going to come out on the upper lateral border of the medulla. Let's just get a different color here. So, cranial nerve 9, upper lateral border of the medulla. Cranial nerve 9, that glossopharyngeal, is going to be responsible for taste of the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. It's going to be some sensory to like the pharynx, the middle ear, the tonsils, and it's going to be responsible for motor to the stylopharyngeus, and it supplies the parotid gland as well. Cranial nerve number 10, the wandering vagus nerve, is going to come off next, and again, it's going to be on the lateral border of the medulla. So it's going to come off here. So we know that that vagus nerve is going to supply the heart, lungs, palate, pharynx, larynx, etc. It kind of wanders through the body. It also does some sensory to like the muscles in the GI tract. What else do we have here? It's motor to the palate, and just some sensory to the pharynx and the larynx. Cool. We will move on to cranial nerve 11. Cranial nerve 11 comes off a little differently. So it's going to come off from actually down here a little more, and it's going to kind of be supplied by a lot of little branches, and then it's going to come off. So has some branches like this. And spinal accessory nerve, what does it do? I'm sure you all have it. It is motor to the SCM, sternocleidomastoid muscle, and the trapezius muscle. It's also going to be part of that nucleus ambiguus. And then the last cranial nerve that we see is going to be our hypoglossal nerve. It actually comes off of the front here. So it's going to come off like this. It's going to be our hypoglossal, and we know that that's going to be motor to the muscles of the tongue. So let's just run through them one more time. I know I haven't labeled them. I kind of wanted to save it, but we see olfactory, right? And we know that that is smell. We see optic. We know that that is sight, and we know that this is the optic chiasm, okay? So this is going to be our oculomotor. This is going to be our trochlear. This next is going to be our trigeminal, which we know is going to be motor to the muscles and mastication, again, and it's going to be sensory to the face. I'm so sorry about that, y'all. I hope I'm not being too confusing. Then, after 5, we would see these down here, and this would be our abducens. I'm going to write on this side now. I'm so sorry. Abducens nerve, right? So we know that that one is going to be important for motor to the lateral rectus muscle. Moving down from that, again, we see our facial nerve, right? So we know that facial is going to be facial expression. So all those muscles of the face. It's also going to be some taste to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Again, sublingual, lacrimal glands, things like that. Moving down from that, we're going to see vestibulocochlear, which could technically be divided into 2 parts. So like even if you wanted to do that, and you see vestibulocochlear. All right, vestibulocochlear is going to be our hearing and equilibrium. Moving down from vestibulocochlear, we have glossopharyngeal. We're going to come to this side now. Glossopharyngeal. Glossopharyngeal is going to be special sense, taste to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. It's also going to monitor that carotid sinus and body. I didn't mention that earlier. And there's going to be some motor to stylopharyngeus, and it's going to innervate the parotid gland as well. Moving down from that one, we are going to see our vagus nerve. Again, that's going to be that wandering nerve, and it has a lot of jobs, Then we're going to have our spinal accessory. To motor to the SCM and the trap, and then our last nerve here is going to be that hypoglossal. Which is going to be motor to the tongue. So, as you can see, I will post these pictures. I'm so sorry that I got a little confusing there, but I hope that drawing this stuff was helpful.